Hi and welcome. This is part 3 of this mini series where we are looking at different challenges that are sometimes in the way when it comes to creating content for your company. As always, that's Connie Steele and I'm Yann Ilunga. Connie, how are you doing? Are you ready to continue our conversation with these content creation challenges?
I'm good and I'm always ready.
Great. So, as we said in past videos, not only of this mini series, but of this corporate podcasting video channel, video playlist, you, Connie, are somebody who has created written content, video content, audio content. The same applies for me. And today, the keyword for this video, when it comes to the challenges, are consistency and quality. I have to raise my hand and say, unfortunately, I'm going to be honest, I've sucked sometimes at being consistent. I would like to say not necessarily at creating quality content, even though there are a couple of things that I'm going to share that if I could go back in time, I would change. And I'm sure that the output would have better quality. Connie, maybe I'm going to hand it over to you, especially with the first part of consistency. In your opinion, why is it important to make sure that the content we create is number one, created, and number two, shared on a regular basis?
Well, to do that, if you're not constantly putting it out there, then people don't know what your perspective is. So we all know that putting more content out there, at least there's the prevailing viewpoint that the more you publish, the more likely your information will be discovered, which then has that opportunity for people to find you. And then it'll be more of a pull strategy, particularly if you're a business, to then establish more relationships at the end of the day. But the challenge is that if you focus so much on getting it out there all the time, and many times we think it's a volume play because you're trying to get it out all the time, your quality suffers. Because then it becomes, oh, shoot, if I don't get it out, I just need to get something out there. You're making a trade-off. And without really thinking about, well, is what I'm putting out there the best product or the one where it conveys my idea in the clearest sense? And if that might be the very first touch point a customer has with you and they read your content and it isn't so good, then you could have missed an opportunity. And so with that challenge of consistency and quality too, I think, another issue is for some companies, you have different people who are responsible for different aspects of content creation. So some person may be responsible for the written format of the content. Another person could be responsible for the video portion of the content. And another person could be responsible for, say, the social aspect. And each of them have a different take on how to express your brand. And they all might have been working in silos. So even though they have their own responsibility and they are probably wonderful and experts in what they do, when you put the content out there, there isn't the consistency across the platforms on the message of who you are, the brand voice, the style, the tone. So when people say, I'm still not clear who you are, and depending on where I go, it feels different, feels a bit jumbled. You can easily get that because you don't have people within your own team at their core kind of being aligned at the end of the day because they are pressured to get something out there. So that's my perspective. What about you?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think for me, as I'm thinking about a company developing a podcast, a video series, a series of articles, an email newsletter, and as you said, there are different team members involved with different aspects of it. I'm always trying to think about the macro level. So what does that look like in terms of the different people or the different departments working together? And then at a micro level, so what does that look like for each department individually? I think that when it comes to especially the consistency component, you made a very good point, Connie. We, unfortunately, and I kind of say we in general terms, but it's said, but I feel it's true. And I'm curious to hear whether you agree or not, Connie, with this point. But I feel that nowadays we're thinking that we need to be the loudest. We need to be the ones who publish content 24/7, in order for content to be effective. But actually, you could even publish content once a week, once every 2 weeks, or even once a month. And that content could still work wonders for your company because, as we said a few times in this video series, you can record one, syndicate many. Meaning, and I remember using this metaphor in another video, and I said, try to imagine or try to think of each piece of content you create as a fruit. Try to really squeeze it to get as much content juice as possible out of it. I think that often we just think, all right, this episode has been shipped, let's focus on the next one. And especially if the content is evergreen, which means it's valuable and relevant today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and in years to come, really make sure that you maximize that. So you may want to turn that video into an audio, or you take the transcription and you turn it into an article, or you take the audio podcast episode, you take some quotes, you make some audiograms, whatever makes sense for what you're trying to achieve. I think it's really important to try to make as much as you can out of each piece of content you produce, because then you're going to be able to share a messaging that, as you told us, Connie, is consistent. And it's also something that will enable you to draw in more content consumers, whether it's readers, listeners, viewers, because you're going to be sharing that content over time across different channels and in different forms. So, Connie, what are your thoughts? Do you also see this problem of wanting to be the loudest, the ones that are at the front of the race the whole time?
Yes, I think, in general, with a lot of companies, the approach has been more push versus pull. So in terms of the style, it tends to be more salesy, and the desire to get out there and get in front of customers, while that is important because you're looking to pull leads, right? Everybody wants to get leads from the content. That doesn't necessarily mean that when you publish that much and the way and the style you're doing it has to be so in your face. There needs to be, again, a consistency. There needs to be a level of quality, and that quality has to deliver value. So it gets back to, how do you ensure, when we talked about strategy, right? Everything always starts with, what's the right strategy? How do you be very clear upfront what message you're trying to create? And from that, clarity of the value you want to deliver, how do you deliver it in the most consistent way so that no matter where people discover the content that you provide, that it has that same resonant message and it's done in the best way possible, such that you've got the highest likelihood of them looking to engage with you. And by having that like salesy tone and putting as much of it out there in their face isn't always the best thing, as I think many people have come to recognize. So anything else that you would add to that before we close out on consistency and quality?
Yeah, I'm going to actually echo what you say and say that if I could go back in time, earlier I said that I was having challenges with consistency, not so much with quality, but if I could go back in time, and if I think about one podcast of mine in particular, what is called 360 Entrepreneur Podcast, something I would change is make sure to never lose sight of the goal. Sometimes with that show, there has been some episodes that are quality episodes, sure, but they don't fit in well with the overall puzzle, which was a specific strategy I wanted to carry out and specific goals I wanted to achieve. So sometimes there has been some pieces of content that have been produced that, don't get me wrong, they are quality pieces, but they are not great quality for the grand scheme of things, simply because they weren't really aligned with the plan, with the goals, with the strategy. So I think that when we're thinking about creating content, it's always important to really think about, okay, what do we want to create right now, next week, or whatever? And how does that individual piece of content fit within the bigger play? So if it's a podcast episode, how does that fit within the series or within the show itself? And then how does the show fit within the company's overall content creation and content marketing strategy? and how does that content creation and content marketing strategy fit within the business overall strategy. So I think that if we make sure that we have things, they can be written down, they can be printed and hanged on the wall, it doesn't matter. But if we make sure that we always go back to our plan, which serves as a sort of compass, we will know that each piece of content takes us one step closer to the goal or goals we want to achieve for our company when it comes to creating content. So as we said, this was part 3. We've covered 2 other challenges in previous videos. We're gonna have the wrap up in the next video. That was Connie Steele. I'm Yann Ilunga. We have plenty more content and resources available for you. The best place to find everything, as well as to get in touch with us if you need help with anything corporate podcasting related, is to go to flywheelassociates.com/podcasting.